There could be a new pill to give hope for people at risk for Alzheimer's.
So for more on this study, obviously we are going to bring in our 9 News medical expert, Dr. Payal Kohli, with more about this. You know, people will hear this and say, really? When?
Yeah.
Obviously.
Give it to me.
I mean, it's huge. The science here is huge. So we know that Alzheimer's has a genetic basis in some percentage of the cases. And it's this gene that we all have. It's called apolipoprotein E. And what it does is it carries fats around our body and it helps our neurons heal themselves. Now, we can have 3 different variants of the gene. We can have ApoE2, which is protective from Alzheimer's. We can have ApoE3, which most of us have, 60%. That's kind of neutral. But if you have ApoE4, it puts a target sign on you that you're very high risk for developing Alzheimer's. Now, if you have 1 bad copy, your risk is 2 to 3-fold higher. If you have 2 bad copies of ApoE4, your risk is 10 to 12-fold higher that you're going to get Alzheimer's.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you hear that, first of all, I know genetics is everything, but do you get tested? If you have, I have to ask you that. I mean, if you have family members, is that something you should actively be proactive about?
I mean, I have patients that come in and ask for it, and I order it for them. So it is available through your doctor. It's also available commercially through 23andMe and some of those sites. So up until now, Kim, we were saying, no, don't get tested because there's nothing we can do about it.
So now maybe.
But now with this kind of research, and I think that's one of the big landmarks about the study, even though it's not completely positive, is that we're starting to say, oh, we need to treat Alzheimer's before it starts to damage those neurons. So if you have this genetic target sign on you and we have medicines that work, then why not test people?
You know, it's exciting when the science and the research in any particular field, and Alzheimer's affects so many people, and it's cruel and awful to have to deal with. But when the science progresses like this, and you can get these tests, how common, I'm curious, how common is it to have the 2?
Both of them. So if you have 2 bad copies, that's about 2 to 3% of us. So more than you'd expect. 1 bad copy is actually 15 to 25% of people, it estimates. So for some of us, we might even want to know if we have that 1 bad copy. So, you know, certainly if I had a family history of Alzheimer's, I think I would want to find out, maybe even not so much just to get these drugs because they're not quite ready yet, but to start to be more aggressive about other risk factors for dementia, like your cholesterol, your blood pressure, your blood sugar, your exercise, your cognitive function, all of the other things we can do.
Yeah, there's all kinds of things that we hear about, we've heard about for a long time. What about this pill? Can it actually hold it off, or what does it do?
So it took patients who have 2 bad copies and they have something called mild cognitive impairment. So they're already starting to show signs of Alzheimer's. Now remember, by the time you have cognitive impairment, you already have some plaque deposition and some neuronal damage in the brain. So you really want to try to catch them before the cognitive impairment occurs. So I would say we need to study even 1 step earlier. But what they found in these particular patients is that they functioned better if they got this. They had, you know, fewer plaques basically in their brain. And if you look on their MRIs, they had less what's called diffusion weighted imaging, less water in the brain. That suggests less neuronal damage occurring in the brain. So these are all really positive signs that they're doing better. And what this drug does is prevents, again, that deposition of that abnormally folded protein, which we know that patients with 2 bad copies are going to abnormally fold this protein deposited in the brain. The brain reacts with inflammation. So if you can prevent that deposition before the damage occurs, that's game-changing in terms of the trajectory. Now, every person who has 2 bad copies doesn't necessarily go on to get Alzheimer's. So it significantly increases your risk, but it's not guaranteed. And so that's really the tricky part, is for us to figure out who are those that are going to progress versus those that maybe have the copies but somehow ward it off.
And it's a little confusing to go through the whole thing, but if people are watching at home, obviously talk to your doctor if you're thinking about getting this test.
I think it's a great idea to talk to your doctor, especially if you have that family history. There's not much we can do right now, but in general, being proactive, and this is something we're doing in medicine about dementia prevention. Prevent dementia. It's not something that happens to you. It's something you have control over, whether it happens to you. And I think that's where the field is really headed.
Good to know. Doctor, thank you so much. And you can find more with Dr. Kohli at 9news.com/Dr. Kohli.